In every corner of the planet, from the dense shadows of the jungle to the silent immensity of the ocean, dwells a silent power capable of stopping a heart and extinguishing a life in an instant. It is not measured by strength or speed, but by an invisible, lethal, and perfect chemistry: poison. Each drop is the legacy of immense time, a precisely tuned formula designed to hunt mercilessly, protect cunningly, and ensure survival at any cost. This heritage is not limited to a single territory, but extends to every corner of the planet. It hides in the humid thickets of forests, crawls beneath the scorching sand of the desert, swims in the deepest seas, and occasionally soars through the skies. From the smallest insects to deadly hornets, various toxins also manifest themselves in creatures that dominate the air. This lethal diversity is revealed in concrete ways in every ecosystem. In the Amazon, a tiny frog accumulates toxins in its skin capable of immobilizing a predator in seconds. Thousands of miles away in the arid Arizona desert, a scorpion wields a venom that disorients its enemy's nervous systems with surgical precision. And beneath the waves, in the deepest seas, the cone snail fires a harpoon laden with devastating neurotoxins. Each of these creatures demonstrates that lethality is not accidental. Each dose is precisely measured. Each attack responds to a relentless logic designed to conserve energy, secure food, and avoid becoming prey. What's most surprising is the diversity of strategies nature has developed, from molecules that paralyze muscles to compounds that destroy tissue from within, and yet they all answer the same unresolved question: why did evolution give them so much power? Some creatures have taken this adaptation to the extreme. There are snakes whose bite contains enough venom to kill dozens of humans in a matter of minutes, and a single drop can immobilize or kill an animal much larger than itself. Faced with such power, an inevitable question arises. If a single attack can wipe out a large living being in a matter of minutes, why did nature endow these creatures with the power to decide life and death in an instant? What happened hundreds, thousands of years ago that caused this and other species to develop such a lethal precision weapon? To begin to understand why evolution gave such disproportionate power to certain creatures, we must delve into one of the most extreme environments for biodiversity, the Brazilian rainforest. There, beneath a dense canopy of leaves where the moisture never dissipates and darkness envelops the ground like a constant blanket, we discover that lethality does not always belong to giants. Among the damp leaves and fallen logs, a tiny predator embodies the paradox of venom better than anyone, small in size, yet possessing a power capable of overcoming much larger adversaries. A curious and hungry nocturnal marsupial digs among rotten branches in search of easy insects. Its snout searches insistently, oblivious to the presence of a creature that tolerates no intrusion. Suddenly, from the darkness, a dark silhouette emerges, long-legged and robust. The spider rears up on its front legs, baring its fangs in a gesture that seems to signal a warning. It doesn't back down. It doesn't give ground. Its front legs move through the air like invisible blades, marking the line between threat and attack. The marsupial, unaware of the risk, swipes clumsily. The spider swiftly dodges and counterattacks. Its fangs sink into the soft flesh, releasing a burst of venom that travels directly to its victim's nervous system. The marsupial writhes for a few moments, its muscles tensing and then paralyzing. Its body remains motionless on the leaf litter, and silence returns as if nothing had happened. The spider lowers its legs, returns to its calm, and disappears into the damp shadows of the jungle. On this occasion, As on so many others, the jungle has witnessed how poison dictates destiny, swift, precise, and definitive. This lethality is no coincidence, but the hallmark of a unique hunter. The Brazilian wandering spider, considered the most venomous in the world, it lives in the tropical forests of Brazil, moving on the ground instead of weaving webs to wait for its prey. Its behavior is vagrant and aggressive. It doesn't build silk traps or lie in ambush. Instead, it roams the terrain in search of opportunities, actively hunting. In this constant stalking, every shadow becomes cover, every corner a hunting ground. The darkness of the jungle is their greatest ally, and their strategy is as direct as it is lethal. But none of these advantages would be meaningful without the resource that defines their supremacy: venom, a mixture of neurotoxins capable of blocking communication between nerves and muscles. In a matter of seconds, it can render even the most agile prey uncontrolled. This effectiveness is reflected in various jungle scenes. A small frog is quickly immobilized. A bird falling within its reach loses coordination and balance, and even a sizable rodent collapses from paralysis. Its precision turns each encounter into a demonstration of evolution taken to the extreme. However, the spider does not waste its power every time it presents itself because its toxin is expensive to produce. The production of these complex molecules requires energy, nutrients, and time, resources that are only used when truly needed. Therefore, the Brazilian wandering bird does not use it as a simple threat, but as a surgical resource that ensures food or repels predators. On the jungle floor, where every night can mean the difference between eating or starving, this precise strategy becomes the key to their survival. Their effectiveness isn't just measured in their hunting. It's also reflected in the way they confront any threat that crosses their path, displaying a courage and self-control uncommon among their peers who often flee, hide, or wait for the intruder to move away. The Brazilian wandering wolf, on the other hand, stands firm, raises its front legs and bares its fangs. It's a clear warning, a gesture announcing its readiness to attack. And when it does, the consequence is usually definitive. The life of this spider embodies the essence of venom as an offensive weapon. There is no passive defense in it, no bright colors to warn predators of its toxicity. In the Brazilian jungle, where everything is in constant tension, it is one of the most extreme examples of how the chemistry of evolution can transform a small hunter into a formidable predator. However, not all venomous jungle animals follow the same strategy. The wandering spider attacks using venom as a sharp sword, but others, on the other hand, have taken the power of chemistry in a completely different direction. These are creatures that don't lurk in the shadows or set silent ambushes. Their warning is visible, marked by bright colors and skins impregnated with toxins they don't need to reveal. And the most disconcerting thing is that some of them, despite their tiny size, possess such disproportionate strength that a single touch can decide between life and death. More than 3,000 kilometers northwest of where the wandering spider roams the Brazilian rainforest floor, the humidity feels different. It's not the same forest, although the lush vegetation is just as stifling. Here, in the tropical forests of Colombia's Choco, rain falls with almost absolute constancy, nourishing a world saturated with greens, mosses, and gleaming leaves. The sound is not dominated by silence, but by the incessant chorus of insects and the murmur of water running down the trunks. In this scenario, the strategy for survival is not to attack, but to warn without violence, to deter the enemy before combat occurs. In this world, defense is chemical and written on every inch of skin. From this moist, vibrant tangle emerges a tiny creature, no bigger than the tip of a hand, whose fame far transcends its size. The golden poison dart frog holds within its body one of nature's most lethal weapons. Despite its inconspicuous appearance, its biology is extraordinary. The concentration of toxin in its skin exceeds that of any other known vertebrate. This uniqueness makes it a fascinating enigma for science and at the same time a living warning to its predators. With just a tiny dose, it can kill animals much larger than itself. A mere fraction, invisible to the naked eye, can stop a predator's heart in a matter of minutes. Faced with such lethality, an inevitable question immediately arises: where does it get that strength? Unlike the wandering spider, which produces its venom internally, this frog doesn't manufacture its toxin from scratch. Its strength comes from what it consumes. Their diet, composed mainly of ants, beetles, and small invertebrates loaded with alkaloids, is the basis of a fascinating biochemical process. Upon ingesting these prey, the frog incorporates and transforms the compounds into batrachotoxin, a molecule that acts on sodium channels in nerve cells, altering their function until it causes total paralysis. In other words, every jump it takes, every insect it catches, is another building block in the construction of a poison that no other animal matches in potency. However, this lethality poses a dilemma. If its skin is impregnated with a substance capable of killing in thousandths of a gram, how is it that the frog itself does not succumb to its own weapon? The answer lies in one of nature's most surprising adaptations. Their sodium channels, the same ones the toxin blocks in other animals, have undergone slight structural modifications. This change, almost imperceptible at the molecular level, makes them inaccessible targets for venom. Thus, what is lethal in other creatures is harmless in them. The frog lives surrounded by its own poison without any risk, as if its skin were a toxic ocean and it was the only fish capable of swimming in it. But not everything in the jungle is driven by chemistry. Opportunity rules here too, and when hunger strikes, even the most obvious signs can be ignored. It's in those moments that the frog's lethality moves from theory to action. On a broad leaf, motionless after the rain, the frog remains calm, wiping the moisture from its shiny skin with its front legs. It has no need to flee, no need to hide. From above, a jungle falcon watches her. Among the tangle of branches, the bird of prey gauges the distance, unaware of the trap it's about to step on. The descent is swift, a flap of wings, a precise swipe. The claws close on the frog, and for a moment the hunter seems triumphant. But contact is enough. Through the membranes of the mouth and the skin of the legs, the toxin enters like an invisible current. The falcon drops its prey and flaps its wings in desperation. Her flight, steady and controlled seconds before, suddenly becomes erratic. The poison blocks communication between her nerves and muscles, and each attempt to escape is more clumsy than the last. Within minutes, the predator's strength drains away. The frog, motionless, remains on the leaf, unharmed, oblivious to the drama it has just unleashed. There was no chase, no confrontation. Chemistry did the work. However, not all jungle dwellers make this mistake. Many animals have learned that approaching these frogs is like playing with death. Before even tasting their toxic skin, a visible warning clearly warns them. Danger is written right on their appearance. In a world where camouflage is often the best defense, their strategy is the opposite, to show off brazenly. But how can one color save a life when the entire jungle is a festival of bright hues? Not all jungle dwellers rely on trial and error for discovery. Many learn before they touch. A young bird moves between branches at the edge of a clearing, attracted by the movement of insects. As it approaches a shiny leaf, it stops dead in its tracks. The frog resting on the greenery not only emits a faint scent, but also exhibits a pattern that the bird of prey recognizes even without having tasted it before. For generations, insectivorous birds, small mammals and reptiles have learned to associate bright colors with a high price. Some did so through personal experience. Others inherited a predisposition that avoids risk in the first place. In everyday practice, this translates into life-saving decisions. The bird turns and leaves in search of food that doesn't require learning the hard way. Color as a warning is not an aesthetic whim. It's a language that nature has refined over thousands of generations. The most intense hues stand out against the green background of the jungle and signal something essential. Yellow and red act as universal messages, a contrast so strong that it stands out even from a distance. Next to them, deep blue, less common in the jungle, is often associated with complex chemical compounds in amphibians and heralds extreme toxicity. Violet, even rarer, appears in some insects and amphibians as an unusual variant of that same language. Green, when intertwined with bright spots or bands, reinforces the signal, while black, when combined with any of these shades, multiplies the contrast and makes the warning impossible to ignore. However, color isn't an exact measure of how much toxin an animal carries. A brighter hue doesn't always guarantee greater lethality. What does happen is that color acts as a reliable reminder to predators. A bird, mammal, or snake that has once tasted toxic prey learns to associate suffering with those bright hues. It only takes one bitter experience, like paralysis after trying to swallow a frog, for that memory to be marked for life. Over time, what began as individual learning becomes a collective heritage. What some learn becomes inscribed in the instinct of the entire species. In this way, patterns like those of certain frogs or snakes become respected signals. This instinct, consolidated by generations of experience, has an equally sophisticated biological basis. In amphibians and reptiles, coloration is constructed using specialized cells called chromatophores. These cells produce or reflect pigments and structure light to create intense blues or lustrous greens. In some cases, the diet provides compounds that influence the intensity of the color. In others, genetics directs the development of patterns, which natural selection then refines according to the signal's usefulness. Therefore, not everything is aesthetic. The colorimetry of these species is a result of multiple functions. It serves as a warning, but can also act in recognition between conspecifics and in sexual selection. A more colorful individual can indicate greater health and a greater capacity to store toxins, making it a more desirable companion or a more fearsome rival. The presence of color solves another practical problem. In the dense darkness of an understory, scent and behavior can fail as distant warnings. Instead, a high-contrast visual pattern conveys the message instantly. However, color is no substitute for behavior. Some animals combine a defensive posture with their coloration, raising their bodies or extending their limbs to fully display the pattern. But what happens when the visual warning isn't limited to a tiny amphibian? In the same forest, among leaves and branches, certain lethal fangs carry equally clear codes, demonstrating that nature repeats successful strategies across different lineages. The red, black, and yellow banded pattern displayed by certain coral snakes is one of the most recognizable messages. Each color combination acts as an immediate warning, conveying to the predator the same warning that centuries of evolution have perfected in amphibians. Predators that survive an encounter with a venomous species not only learn from that experience, they pass that knowledge on to future generations, imprinting the pattern on the forest's ecological memory. For this reason, many avoid even getting close. Others, less fortunate or less cautious, learn the hard way, thus reinforcing the signal's effectiveness throughout the ecosystem. But color isn't always enough. There are situations in which the warning is ignored or doesn't arrive in time. Then the deeper question arises. If a visual signal can prevent conflict, what happens when the warning fails and the only possible defense is a poison that acts in seconds? Deep in the Amazon, snakes like the coral snake and the vine snake not only display colors that warn or camouflage that deceives, but they have also perfected toxins capable of stopping life in a matter of minutes. Both represent opposing paths within the same strategy. The coral reef, with its red, yellow, and black bands, proclaims its lethality at first glance. The vine, on the other hand, relies on the invisibility of its elongated, slender body, which blends in with the stems and branches in the thicket. The jungle has taught them that survival depends on sending a clear message: intimidate without fighting or attack without warning. The coral snake is an extreme example of warning and power. Its neurotoxic venom is among the fastest acting in the animal kingdom, as a brief bite is enough to disrupt communication between the nerves and muscles of its prey. The result is almost immediate paralysis and the inability to breathe. Within minutes, even an animal several times the size of the snake succumbs without being able to react. Their lifestyle reflects this strength, moving discreetly under wet leaf litter or among fallen logs, avoiding prolonged exposure and demonstrating that they do not need to chase their prey to dominate their environment. It is this effectiveness that explains why predators who know their reputation rarely take risks. The simple contact of their fangs is enough for birds of prey and large mammals to maintain caution by keeping their distance, aware that a single mistake can cost them their lives. But what happens when a curious intruder ignores the warning? A coati approaches, sniffing through the damp leaves, moving its paws cautiously, assessing the sounds and movements around it. A few meters away, the coral snake remains motionless, its body almost invisible among leaves and branches, waiting for the right moment. The mammal stops, sniffs again, and takes a step forward. The tension is palpable in every moment, in every restrained movement. The snake senses the proximity, its muscles preparing for the attack, but it doesn't act yet. Time seems to stretch out. When the calculated moment arrives, the coral reef attacks with a fleeting bite. The coati barely registers the contact before retreating, confused by the impact. At first, it still retains agility, with each muscle trying to respond and each leg seeking stability. But little by little, paralysis sets in. Her movements become clumsy, strength drains from her limbs, and confusion replaces vitality. The poison blocks nerve signals, transforming energy into immobility. The snake doesn't need to chase or insist. Biology takes care of the outcome. In this delicate balance, the coral reef demonstrates that for a small animal, fragile against larger predators, venom is the great equalizer. Its limited size doesn't prevent it from dominating, and its chemistry becomes the ultimate survival tool. While this specimen reveals how speed and venom equalize unequal forces, the vine snake follows a completely opposite strategy. Its approach relies more on camouflage and patience, quite unlike the aggressiveness of the coral reef shark. Its elongated, deep green body, which reflects the light from its leaves, allows it to blend almost completely into the jungle foliage. Unlike the coral, which alarms its enemies with its color, the vine, a large predator, doesn't need to die to learn its lesson. All it needs is a painful experience that forces it to retreat and never return. In this balance, the bullet ant found its strength, a poison that is not lethal, but leaves an indelible mark on those who suffer from it. This defensive mechanism reaches its maximum expression when the colony is in danger, and the response is immediate and coordinated. When threatened by a mammal like the tamandua, a specialist in invading anthills, the ground becomes a hive of black bodies that pounce on the intruder's paws and snout. Each sting delivers the stinger to the base and delivers the toxin in fractions of a second, turning defense into a swift and lethal attack. The tamandua, confident in its size and claws, barely manages to poke around the nest entrance before feeling the first sting, then another and another. The pain grows like an unstoppable wave, tense muscles, involuntary spasms, a burning sensation that rises through the extremities. There's no hemotoxic or neurotoxic venom like in snakes, and it doesn't cause paralysis or collapse. There's something more primitive and effective, a pure suffering that disarms any attempt to continue the attack. Within minutes, the predator flees, defeated not by death, but by the unbearable intensity of the experience. The bullet ant doesn't hunt large prey, nor does it need to kill to survive. Its venom doesn't act as an offensive weapon, but rather as a chemical shield. It is such a radical strategy that even among insects it stands out as an extreme case. Where others opted for speed, camouflage, or a lethal bite, this species chose torment as a warning. In the complex web of interactions in the rainforest, this adaptation makes sense. In the Amazon, danger is constant and the need for defense is daily, so nature has sculpted extreme solutions. From tiny amphibians camouflaging themselves among puddles and wet leaves to reptiles crawling through leaf litter, they've all learned the same lesson. In this teeming realm, chemistry is the universal language of survival. Deep in the rainforest, where moisture clings to every leaf and life seems to sprout in abundance, we move to an environment where abundance is less, and the strategy for staying alive takes different forms. The lush vegetation is left behind, and before us stretches a golden immensity where the sun grants no respite, and the sand seems to devour all traces of moisture. Here in the desert, life doesn't disappear, it reinvents itself. At first glance, it would seem impossible that in a place where every drop of water is a treasure, animals would invest energy in making poison, an expensive and demanding biological resource. If in the jungle, fierce competition justified this expense in an environment where resources are scarce, the question becomes inevitable. Why is it that here, where nothing is left over, some creatures have perfected such potent toxins? How does the anatomy of these animals sustain such a costly mechanism in terms of energy and water without dooming them to failure? To understand this, one must think in terms of the economy of life. In the desert, every decision makes the difference between life and death. Every movement, every breath is calculated. And in this logic, poison is not a luxury, but a tool of maximum efficiency. Poison in the desert is not wasted. There are no impulsive attacks or indiscriminate defenses. Here, lethal chemistry is measured with astonishing precision. Each dose is calibrated to immobilize without waste, to neutralize on the first try. Error is costly. Wasting poison unnecessarily can mean not having enough for the next prey, and in a territory where opportunities are minimal, a mistake can mean death. Unlike the Amazon, where abundance allows for the frequent use of poison, the desert compels the opposite behavior and turns its inhabitants into true economists of adaptation. A scorpion doesn't attack without reason, and a snake doesn't inject more venom than necessary. This resource is treated with the same caution as the water they can barely retain in their system. Here, natural selection has shaped not just the poison, but the entire strategy surrounding it. From the attack stance to the decision to employ it, everything responds to cold and calculated logic. These animals don't improvise and can't afford to be wasteful. Every move of the desert spider is calculated with absolute precision, and every drop of venom is saved for when the prey truly warrants it. Their attacks combine risk and benefit in a delicate balance where strategy and lethal chemistry determine success. In the driest deserts, efficiency reaches its peak in this emblematic inhabitant. Its mere presence commands respect and caution, and every stinging motion is measured and lethal. The scorpion advances stealthily, remembering that in this unforgiving world even the smallest can wield formidable power. How does this predator manage to manage such a valuable resource in an environment where every mistake is punishable by death? What strategies has it developed to be both patient and lethal? Unlike the rainforest, the desert is austere. Every living being that inhabits these lands has learned to survive under implacable rules, save energy, minimize risks, and waste nothing. In this extreme balance, poison becomes a valuable resource and the key to existence for those who know how to use it precisely. Robust and amber-colored, this predator measures just a few centimeters. Its thick, pincer-like pedipalps are its first line of control. But the real power lies in the segmented tail, arched over the body. culminating in the toxin, a bulbous structure that houses the poison gland connected to a curved, pointed stinger. In this specialized organ, a substance is produced that no predator or prey forgets, and it is here that the species is recognized, the Arizona bark scorpion. The venom of this specimen is not simple. It's a carefully tuned cocktail containing neurotoxins capable of interfering with sodium and potassium channels, disrupting communication between nerve cells. These substances are combined with enzymes such as hyaluronidase, which penetrates the tissues, and proteases that begin to break down the body's interior. Salts and peptides complete the formula, causing intense pain, cramps, and, when the doses are sufficient, even respiratory collapse. Without a doubt, this lethal combination not only immobilizes the victim, it also initiates a process of digestion from within, demonstrating the extraordinary precision of its chemical design. Unlike coral snake venom, which acts like a nerve agent designed to kill quickly, scorpion venom serves multiple functions. Not only does it incapacitate its prey, but it also transforms it into liquid food. Each injection triggers a process that turns muscles and organs into mush ready to be absorbed. In this ecosystem, where energy is invaluable, the scorpion's strategy proves perfect, trapping, liquefying, and consuming without wasting energy or time. But producing venom is a costly process that requires complex proteins and high metabolic costs. Therefore, the scorpion administers every drop with surgical precision. It doesn't always inject the same amount, but rather precisely calculates each movement. When confronted with a small insect, it may apply a minimal dose or even use only its pincers to crush it. However, if the threat is greater, it discharges the entire contents of its glands. And there's more, since their venom doesn't affect all animals the same way. Some toxins primarily affect arthropods, while others affect small vertebrates. This carefully tuned combination makes the venom a versatile cocktail, adapted to prey of different sizes and characteristics. This chemical versatility is complemented by its hunting strategy. First, the pincers immobilize the prey, ensuring it cannot escape. Then, the stinger arcs and penetrates with a swift, precise motion. In a matter of moments, the victim is doomed. The stinger works not only as a weapon, but as a scalpel that opens the door to an invisible and lethal external digestion that transforms the prey into food without wasting a single effort. In this desert, where there is no room for waste, each sting is a precise calculation, and the scorpion's every movement responds to the demands of an unforgiving environment. The effectiveness of poison is reflected in every decision, because in a world where every moment counts, strategy and chemistry always advance hand in hand. As the sun retreats and the heat of the day subsides, the instinct that guides the hunt adjusts to the darkness that envelops the arena. The night opens up a different world, where every shadow can mean threat or food, and only the most cautious manage to survive. What secrets lie hidden in the cracks of the arid soil? Who dares to move among shadows that conceal invisible predators? From the folds of the dry earth emerges a desert dweller, short, armored, and armed with precise weapons. The Arizona bark scorpion begins its nightly rounds. Every step it takes on the sand is measured. From a distance, the scorpion senses an insect nearby, and following its instincts moves forward cautiously, getting closer and closer. The air remains still, with no wind to carry signals. But the scorpion doesn't need eyes to navigate. Beneath its body, a pair of structures called pectins scan the ground like inverted antennae, picking up minute vibrations. A dull, almost imperceptible rustling sound reveals a cricket moving among the stones. The prey is close and the scorpion stops. It doesn't attack immediately. In the desert, patience is as important a tool as poison. It advances a few centimeters with slow, almost invisible movements, its claws open, tense. The cricket approaches, unaware of the ambush. Then it happens. In a split second, the pincers grip the insect's body tightly, immobilizing it. Before it can pounce, The curved stinger whips down. The tip plunges precisely into the insect and the poison flows out. Enzymes begin to break down the internal tissues of the captured cricket. The cricket doesn't die instantly, but it stops fighting because its nervous system has collapsed. At this point, the hunt isn't over, it's just beginning. While the venom takes effect, the scorpion holds the cricket motionless as if waiting for something more. And it actually does. It waits for the first stage of digestion. The poison not only paralyzes, it also transforms the organs and muscles into a semi-liquid mixture. The scorpion lacks jaws capable of tearing through solid flesh. Its mouth can only absorb liquids, so before feeding, it must transform its prey from within. Minutes later, the process is complete. The scorpion brings its chelicerae together and begins sucking on what was once an intact body. It slowly draws in the fluids, utilizing every drop of energy. When it's over, all that remains is an empty structure, the carcass of a cricket that no longer has life or substance. So, in an environment where scarcity dictates the rules, the scorpion has played its best card, a venom that not only kills, but also feeds. In the desert, where most hunters rely on speed or strength, this arachnid has perfected another strategy: precision and patience. However, not all inhabitants of this arid kingdom rely on a stinger to survive. Some, larger and slower, have found their own hidden form of defense. His threat doesn't reveal itself immediately, and in a world where every mistake can cost a life, that's enough to command respect. Amid the hot rocks and thorny bushes of the desert, something moves cautiously. Its low, heavy body is covered in hard scales, each with small, bead-like, bony plates. This armor isn't meant for speed or agility, but for the patience of one who knows that survival is measured in silent, calculated steps. Its name resonates like an ancient echo, the Gila monster. It inhabits the rocky slopes, dry riverbeds, and scrublands of the Sonoran Desert between Arizona and northwestern Mexico, and its very presence is a reminder that in this landscape every creature has learned to turn caution into a weapon. Its life is largely spent underground, a refuge where the temperature remains stable. During the day, it hides in abandoned rodent burrows or deep crevices, places that protect it from extreme heat and predators. It only emerges when conditions permit, with the waning warmth of spring or after the monsoon rains. It then walks deliberately along the edges of dry streams, raising its head and protruding its forked tongue to read the chemical landscape with its vomeronasal organ. Every movement is calculated, every decision geared towards survival in an environment where energy must be managed carefully. The Gila monster doesn't chase across open fields like a racer. It prefers to locate hidden nests and burrows with young, selecting its food with precision. Bird and reptile eggs, newly hatched chicks and small defenseless mammals. Every meal is a high-performance strategy. It rarely feeds, but it stores enough reserves in its tail and abdomen. It can go for long periods of time without eating in a year, and in the desert, that patience becomes an advantage. The venom that makes it unique is not found in hollow fangs or a stinger, but rather housed in specialized glands in the lower jaw. The grooved teeth allow the toxin to flow slowly, and the lizard must bite and maintain pressure to distribute the poisonous saliva. It's not an instantaneous strike, but rather a stubborn hold that turns the bite into a sustained, precise injection. The chemistry that circulates through these grooves is complex and precise. It's composed of proteins and peptides that affect blood pressure and nerve transmission, along with enzymes that help the venom disperse throughout the tissues. In small prey, the effects are felt immediately. Coordination is disrupted, vitality diminishes, and pain immobilizes. In rodent or bird nests, the impact is final within a few minutes and the prey stops moving before realizing what has happened. Unlike the scorpion, which liquefies its prey to extract nutrients, this lizard does not use its venom as an external digestive. Its function is more strategic. It allows it to neutralize defenses that would otherwise prevent capture. Each bite is slow but precise, designed to keep prey motionless without having to chase it and expend valuable energy in an environment where water and food are scarce. The toxin acts from the moment it flows, breaking down resistance, altering coordination, and ensuring that the hunt is completed efficiently without additional risk to the predator. The Gila monster proves that evolution can place venom in unexpected places and demand calculated patience from the predator, a bite that acts as both a weapon and a lock. But the story of venom isn't limited to a desert. Thousands of miles from the dry arroyos of Arizona and the stony shadows of the Gila, there is another arena where the chemistry of life defines hunting and defense. We move to sub-Saharan Africa, a continent where every toxin and every bite has immediate consequences and where evolution has forged surprising paths. Here, while some animals perfect increasingly potent poisons, others have learned to confront them and sometimes turn them to their advantage. This raises the question that guides this new exploration. What happens when an animal decides that poison will not be a limit, but an opportunity? On the edges of the savanna and in the dry scrub, a short, compact and purposeful figure emerges. It doesn't have the size of a big cat or the strength of a hyena, but it possesses something few dare to challenge, a reputation earned through boldness. It's the honey badger, a creature that has made recklessness and resilience its trademark. Its two-tone coat, black on the belly and grayish-white on the back, is more than an ornament. It's a symbol in the African desert landscape. Those who know him know that confronting him can end in deep wounds and a bitter lesson, but what makes it truly extraordinary is not its appearance, but its biology. While most animals have perfected poisons for hunting or defense, this small mammal took a different route, neutralizing them. In an evolutionary race where snakes became more toxic to survive, the honey badger decided not to be easy prey. And he achieved this thanks to an adaptation that seems to have come from a laboratory. Proteins in his blood that bind to toxins and block them before they take on a lethal effect. He's not invulnerable. A bite from a black mamba or cobra can render him unconscious for a short time, a feint that lasts for minutes. But that's the difference. He gets up, shakes the dirt off his fur, and resumes what he started. Resilience isn't an accident. It's a tool shaped by millions of years because his diet depends on it. For the badger, poison isn't a wall. It's a calculated obstacle, and on the other side of the obstacle, there's food. Its protection doesn't end with chemistry. The badger's skin is thick and surprisingly loose. This means that even if a snake bites and holds on, the badger can twist, counterattack, and bite with its powerful jaws. And it does. The fearlessness that made it famous isn't just attitude, it's strategy backed by anatomy. But the question arises, what happens when a predator with deadly venom comes face to face with the audacity of the honey badger? On a dense afternoon, where the heat ripples across the dry grass, the badger sniffs among the bushes. Its short ears are alert to the slightest sound, while its keen sense of smell guides it along the chemical trail that betrays the snake. The trail intensifies near a flat rock, where a puff adder rests camouflaged with the earth. It's one of Africa's most venomous snakes, capable of swiftly bringing down small mammals that cross its path. The badger knows this, not out of fear but from experience. It approaches unhurriedly, its body low, its claws ready. The viper detects the vibration and coils into a spiral, hissing and inflating its neck in a warning that few ignore. But the badger doesn't back down. It takes another step forward, its head lowered, its eyes fixed on the snake. The viper strikes with a sharp blow, its fangs slamming into the badger's face and the venom entering its bloodstream. Any other animal would retreat, paralyzed by the pain that precedes death. The badger, on the other hand, responds with fury. It bites behind the head and shakes its prey until its resistance is broken. Within minutes, the snake lies motionless. The badger staggers back a few steps and lies down in the grass, its belly pressed to the ground. It breathes heavily as the venom circulates through its system. A minute passes, then 5, then 10. His body trembles, but he doesn't stop. The antibodies kick in, the proteins do their job, and half an hour later the badger opens its eyes, shakes off the dust and returns to the viper's carcass. He begins to eat mentally, following a relentless order. Each bite provides energy that will sustain him for days. The scene may seem brutal, but it is the logical outcome of a race in which there are no ties. Here, evolution doesn't reward excessive strength or uncontrolled speed. It rewards adaptation, and the honey badger is living proof that chemistry doesn't belong only to those who invented it to kill. She is also a shield for those who refuse to die. Her story doesn't contradict the logic of poison, it completes it, because in nature, no advantage is eternal. If a badger can withstand a snake's deadly chemistry, what other creatures have learned to bend the rules of venom or even turn it to their own advantage? Thousands of miles away from the African savannas, the same law governs a different world, the ocean. There, the struggle for survival takes place not among roots or burrows, but in open waters where threats float, swim, and lurk. In this three-dimensional space, venom ceases to be a hidden resource and becomes a force that dominates every encounter, functioning as a true chemical symphony that regulates life and death in the marine kingdom. Beneath the surface, the sensation is deceptive. Everything seems slow, peaceful. Gentle currents moving coral colonies, schools of fish flashing with mirror-like light. But the silence is full of invisible weapons. Where on land speed can save a life, in the water there's nowhere to run. The silence underwater is filled with invisible weapons. Where on dry land speed can save a life, here there's nowhere to run. In the ocean, strategy depends on chemistry, and few creatures demonstrate this as accurately as the cone snail. At first glance, it's harmless. A geometrically patterned shell rests motionless on the white sand like a lost reef ornament. It doesn't move, it doesn't lurk, it doesn't pursue. Yet beneath that stillness, a lethal mechanism lurks. Each snail has a hollow dart connected to a gland loaded with neurotoxins, a combination of specialized peptides known as toxins. Each molecule attacks the muscles, nerves, and senses of its prey in a different way, adapting to the type of animal that dares to approach. When a curious fish gets too close, the snail fires. The harpoon pierces the scales in a split second, and the toxin acts with ruthless precision. The venom blocks the sodium channels in the nerve membranes, interrupting the electrical signal that coordinates every movement. The prey remains rigid, suspended like a dead leaf, while the snail calmly extends its proboscis, swallowing it whole. Each shot is calculated. Preparing the harpoon and the toxin takes time, but waiting ensures a sure hit. In the cone snail, slowness and lethality combine in perfect harmony. There's no rush, no unnecessary effort, only pure efficiency, a chemical strategy that dominates every encounter and demonstrates that under open water, survival is written in molecules, not speed. But not all ocean killers need projectiles. Some turn their own bodies into death-laden phantoms. Between the almost invisible tentacles of a box jellyfish, light fragments like liquid crystal. It looks fragile, but each filament is a chemical trap. Thousands of nematocysts, tiny armed capsules, await the slightest touch. When a fish or turtle collides with this transparent forest, the capsules shoot out, piercing microscopic needles that inject venom at a speed that defies imagination. Within seconds, the victim goes into shock and its heart may collapse before the animal understands what hit it. It is one of the fastest and deadliest poisons in existence, fine-tuned to kill without pursuit. There is no struggle here, just contact and silence. Further down, where the reef breaks down into sand and debris, a seemingly absolute stillness reigns. Among the rocks and seaweed, a shape is barely distinguishable, the stonefish. At first glance, it looks like just another rock covered in silt and vegetation, motionless like the environment that surrounds it. But appearances can be deceiving. On its back, rigid, poisonous needles wait silently, ready to pierce the skin of any creature that steps on it by mistake. Each spine is a conduit for powerful toxins capable of causing necrosis, paralysis, and pain so acute that fainting may arrive before any help arrives. He doesn't need to flee. His defense has evolved into an offense, a shield that hurts as much as a spear. This unique habitat gives it an advantage. Clear sands, fragmented reefs, and patches of algae form a canvas where the stonefish goes completely unnoticed. Their camouflage not only deceives prey, it also confuses potential predators. Only when the sting comes does the truth reveal itself. Beneath the stillness of the rock lies one of the reef's most lethal weapons, poised to defend its territory with silent precision. The same precision that makes its spines a deadly shield is applied when the stonefish searches for food. Its large protractile mouth allows it to capture fish and small crustaceans that come too close without having to move or expend energy chasing them. Each spine not only protects, but also warns potential predators. Approaching means immediate risk. In this world of silent precision, the stonefish turns immobility into a defense as lethal as any active attack. Despite its size, the blue-ringed octopus isn't limited to defense. It's an agile and meticulous predator, stalking crustaceans, small mollusks, and fish that stray too close to its shelter. Its camouflage allows it to remain invisible while observing them, and its glowing rings warn those who get too close. When it decides to attack, it quickly extends its arms and bites, injecting toxin that immobilizes the prey before it can escape. Every move is calculated. Venom is not just a shield, but a perfect tool for capturing food without expending unnecessary energy. In these waters, where danger lurks in every shadow and every current can transform a moment into life or death, each creature has perfected its own strategy. These 4 species, with 4 different tactics, have made one thing clear. In the ocean, speed isn't always power. Here, chemistry determines who survives and who succumbs. A single drop of toxin can decide a fate, and silent precision becomes the ultimate force in this underwater world. But not all waters are salty. Further offshore, the tide recedes into estuaries where the salt loses its strength and the color of the sea turns brown. From there, rivers flow through jungles and savannas, liquid corridors that sustain diverse life. If chemistry became an art in the open ocean, here evolution developed other tactics, as lethal as they were unexpected. In Africa and Asia, silt-laden rivers hide motionless silhouettes on the bottom. Catfish lurk among sunken logs and roots, seeking oxygen. Their flat bodies and whiskers that brush the seabed allow them to navigate in the dark. They have no fangs or jaws capable of crushing. Their defense and warning function lie in the spines that crown their dorsal and pectoral fins. Each one is anchored to a system of glands that secrete protein toxins. When the spine pierces, the venom enters the wound through capillary action. This effect doesn't kill a large predator, but it does slow it down. It causes acute pain, swelling, and in some cases a reaction that paralyzes the limb, which reduces any attempted pursuit. It's enough for the fish to escape to the safety of the mud. But the true effectiveness of this defense is revealed in everyday encounters, where every attempt at attack can turn into a costly mistake. On the banks of the Mekong, a kingfisher dives into a school of juveniles. It catches one and climbs onto the branch, the prey throbbing in its beak. The blow against the bark doesn't completely immobilize it. The bird adjusts its grip, and in the struggle, the thorn lodges in the corner of its mouth. The reaction is immediate. The beak opens, the fish falls into the water, and the kingfish retreats, shaking its head. The catfish hides among the stems and disappears. In the Congo, the scene is repeated with young otters and human hands searching for food in murky waters. For a fish lacking speed and sharp teeth, that chemistry is the line between continuing to breathe or being reduced to fragments. Further west, the continent sinks into a green labyrinth where humidity is perpetual. There, in the slow-moving channels of the Amazon, a seemingly harmless hunter navigates the water column. It has no spines or sting. It produces no toxins. Its weapon is pure electricity. The electric eel measures up to 2 meters, and its cylindrical body is lined with thousands of electrocytes, modified cells that were once muscle fibers. Each one acts like a miniature battery. When activated in series, they deliver a discharge that far exceeds the threshold any muscle can tolerate. It is not poison in the chemical sense, but it performs the same function: to neutralize. In the shadows of a muddy branch, the eel coils among submerged roots. A school of small fish passes by, unaware of its presence. Then the water vibrates. First, a short, disorienting surge, then the stakes rise, and a series of pulses run through the liquid column. The fish tremble, lose coordination, and float stiffly. The predator moves slowly and catches one, then another, without wasting a single drop of poison or making a sudden movement. In the same split second that the discharge reaches its maximum voltage, the scene is resolved. Electricity, in this context, is an extension of the environment. Water conducts, amplifies, and converts the current into an invisible bond that binds the dam. The energy cost is no small feat. Generating discharges requires storing ions and coordinating the firing as if it were a controlled storm, but the efficiency makes up for it. In a world where visibility is zero and current carries chemical signals, electricity offers something no toxin guarantees: absolute speed. Even when faced with a potential predator, a single shock is enough to open a gap and escape. This dual function, attack and defense, explains why this adaptation thrived in rivers where competition is fierce and the depths don't allow for long escape. Compared to toxins, electric shocks seem like an evolutionary leap to another plane. The poison infiltrates and acts silently, drop by drop, until the prey can't react. Electricity strikes like liquid lightning, giving no time to do anything. Both strategies were born to solve the same dilemma: capture or survive without depleting reserves in a dense and deceptive environment. In freshwater, there is no room for pursuit. Every movement consumes oxygen in a liquid that retains it poorly. That's why precision is the law. A spine charged at the exact moment, or a pulse that runs through the entire body before the eyes can see. Rivers are arteries that flow between continents, and within them life clings with invisible weapons. Poison and electricity are not whims. They are responses honed over millions of years in a landscape where calm is a mirage. Even here, where the current seems placid, chemistry and physics decide who feeds and who becomes food, and in this fragile balance, survival continues to write its history with charges, molecules, and strategies that defy the imagination. Throughout this journey, we have explored jungles, deserts, and places where life reinvents itself to endure. Amid the shadows of the Amazon rainforest, on the scorching sands of the desert, and beneath the surface of the oceans, we discover a common thread that unites all these worlds: poison and lethal toxins. These substances are not simple weapons. They represent biochemical solutions that evolution has perfected in countless ways, capable of attacking, defending, and even facilitating the digestion of those who possess them. Every organism that uses them reveals, in a tangible way, how life translates chemistry into survival. No matter the scenario, because nature has found in chemistry a universal language that allows it to survive and thrive. Among its most impressive protagonists is the Brazilian wandering spider, which deploys a lethal neurotoxin arsenal. Its bite is not simply a warning, but a precise attack, capable of collapsing the nervous system of its prey and neutralizing them before they can react. The aggressiveness of this predator, combined with the speed of its movements, makes it a relentless hunter in the darkness of the jungle. In the same ecosystem, the tiny poison dart frog doesn't need fangs or claws because its defense lies within its own skin. The batrachotoxin that permeates it makes every contact a deadly risk, ensuring that any attempted attack is immediately punished. This toxin isn't a product of its own synthesis, but rather is obtained through its diet, incorporating compounds from small insects and transforming them into a true chemical shield. The energy of other creatures is thus converted into pure poison, demonstrating reusability taken to the extreme. But after this journey, an inevitable question arises. Why did some species develop venom and others not, even within the same group? Why do some frogs accumulate batrachotoxins in their skin while others, very similar, remain harmless? And why have some snakes perfected injector fangs while others rely solely on constriction? The answer is not unique because everything indicates that multiple factors are involved and intertwined in the evolutionary history of each lineage. Among them, one hypothesis suggests that ecological pressure plays a central role, since in environments where competition is fierce and feeding opportunities are scarce, having a chemical weapon can mean the difference between hunting and dying of starvation. In dense jungles where visibility is limited and predators are abundant, a lethal toxin may be the surest guarantee of survival. Diet also plays a key role, as some species do not synthesize their toxins and instead acquire them through their diet. This is the case with poison dart frogs, which transform alkaloids from small insects into lethal compounds. While some species obtain their toxins from their diet, others, such as snakes and scorpions, produce their own neurotoxins through complex biochemical pathways, an ability that arises from specific genetic mutations and adaptations. Molecular biology is involved in this process, where surprising changes occur. Gene duplications create copies of genes that previously encoded normal proteins, and over time these copies could be modified without affecting the protein's original function. These modifications allowed the protein to evolve into a toxin capable of altering nerves, muscles, or cells, transforming what was once harmless into a lethal chemical weapon. It's as if nature takes common, existing tools and, through minor tweaks, reinvents them for a completely new and surprising purpose. However, even molecular creativity comes at a cost because producing and maintaining these toxins requires energy and resources. It has a high metabolic cost, so it is only maintained in species where the benefit outweighs the investment, as is the case with the Brazilian wandering spider, whose lethal neurotoxin turns each attack into a guarantee of survival and successful hunting. This same efficiency is reflected throughout the entire food chain, where pressure acts from both sides, with prey developing defenses and strategies to avoid being hunted, and predators adjusting their tactics to capture them. As one individual develops resistance, its counterpart perfects its venom, and so over millions of years a constant arms race ensues. In this way, increasingly complex toxins appear, accompanied by visual and chemical signals that warn of danger, displaying bright colors, emitting pungent odors, and manifesting in warning behaviors. In this context, tiny and fragile creatures at first glance have transformed their weakness into an unbeatable resource. Chemistry has given them the ability to defeat opponents dozens of times larger, immobilize predators, and even turn their own bodies into a biological minefield. What seemed like a disadvantage of size and strength has transformed into one of the most effective weapons that evolution has ever conceived. And in essence, all these species share something more than their toxicity, an extraordinary resilience. They have emerged in extreme ecosystems, in environments where life hangs by a thread, and have found a response that combines precision, economy, and brutal effectiveness. Poison thus becomes a strategy as elegant as it is ruthless. Today we know that in nature survival rarely depends on brute force. It's often written in molecules, in ion channels, in small doses capable of changing the course of a life. Poison isn't a whim, it's not evil, It's adaptation. It's the solution that evolution surgically designed for those who couldn't win by size or speed, but could win by chemical ingenuity. In the end, the question isn't why poison exists, but how life will continue to reinvent it. Because as long as there are predators and prey, as long as there is a struggle for survival, chemistry will remain a weapon, a tool and a language, and the world will remain in many ways a planet ruled by toxins.